Hi everyone, I'm Ian McDougall, the steward from our office. This is a project that began in 2013 for us when we were asked to look at a new school hall. In 2016 the brief changed to a school hall and a teaching hub. Next slide. The project also meant a reorganisation of the site. There's very limited area that we could put the teaching hub in. The school identified some old buildings right in the centre of the building that you can see called the Merton there. So we actually had to demolish the existing buildings there and then build the new building into the middle. And then the school hall, which is called the Leonardian there, was a new... the school hall was really a performing arts centre, a venue for both theatre and acoustic music for performance. Quite a difficult challenge. The hall itself is a 550 fixed seat venue, which also has another 50 seats on the 4-stage lift. It's a very sophisticated bit of performing arts teaching facility. In fact, many country towns would love to have this particular facility, but it's an important part of the education program at St Leonard's. It's seen as a very important part of the overall teaching program. This building, as I said, has the performing arts facility. It has 2 STEM teaching. We managed to fit 2 STEM teaching spaces in underneath. You can kind of see that in the section there. Yep, thanks.
So we're going to go through the interiors of the Leonardian first. So we took inspiration from the coastal landscape around Bayside, the school crest, and the adjacent Harefield House, which is a Victorian building that's very heritage listed and very prominent on the site and of importance. So within the foyers, we sort of took those ideas and into the way that we approached the interior form and also the finishes used through the space. You can see Harefield House through the glazing there. The foyer itself functions as a foyer space bar, but also doubles as a presentation space during the school day and for breakfast talks and the like, so it includes that technology. And inside the theatre, go through the interior of that.
The foyer space, you can hold events in that are not related to the theatre itself, or it can be conjoined. The interior, I mean, obviously with a space like this, which has to perform from a point of view of straight theatre, spoken word, but then it also has to accommodate a 60, 80-piece orchestra, has 2 modes to allow it to do that, and the acoustics in that hall therefore have to be very precise. The treatment of the walls, you can see the giant cornice reference back to Harefield House, but also the sense of the room being very welcoming, enclosing, the idea of it not being a highly sort of abstracted hall, but the sense that it actually is fully embracing either as a theatre. This is in theatre mode. Do you want to just go back to that other one? And you can see it's actually got a mechanised sound shell that comes in around at the flick of a switch, so to speak, which allows the room to perform brilliantly for performance music. Yep. And we've deconstructed, you have to perforate the walls so you can get all the acoustics working. There's a shot, I think, where we've deconstructed the school crest into those elements that allow us to do the perforations. Yep.
And there, in the first performance that only happened earlier this year.
Yeah, quite a lot of the photos we've got, because it finished in February last year.
And then, the other building in July.
We weren't allowed to take photos there except on certain days, and then there were hardly any students there when we did it. This was, you go.
In between the 2 buildings, we have the Agora, which is the heart of the school, and you can see it here used during a school day recently.
Got a little stage out there on the back of the...
And it also links, I guess, to this Merton Building, which is sitting between all the other buildings that are at various different levels.
So it interconnects with the existing fabric. That shot just shows one of the points at which it has to connect with the Darryl Jackson's buildings, which are also on the site.
Yeah. So in terms of the Merton Building, which is a senior school teaching building, it's a 4-level building with basement car park, a senior school cafe, two levels of learning spaces or teaching spaces with 11 classrooms, a lecturette and informal teaching, and then the top level, an exam, flat floor exam level that can cater for both their VCE and their IB student exams.
It's worth just mentioning this teaching hub is for what they call transition to tertiary. So it's focused on senior students who are learning to work without guidance, I guess you'd say.
With the teaching spaces, we needed to be able to address many different pedagogies and the ways that teachers teach now and into the future and how that might change. So the classrooms themselves spill out into the corridor spaces and have large sliding doors that allow you to teach both in the class and then break out into the corridor spaces. Space for common areas for students to gather in between classes or at the end of the day. And so this is just describing where they are, and they're sort of clustered throughout the building on the across the floors. In terms of the interior, we wanted to kind of touch on Harefield House and do this idea of reinterpreting the Victorian and identifying those informal teaching spaces as a contrast to the more formal teaching classrooms. And also in terms of we wanted to use colour to identify the different levels throughout the building and use the vertical stratification of a forest so that we had this kind of burnt reddy orange on the ground level, the green of the level 1 and the sky, the blue of the exam level. And you can see this here through some of the photos of these informal spaces. The lecturette, looking through to that. That Persian carpet and these informal spaces that now are filled with students and not during COVID. There's also a commons, and obviously we had fun in the bathrooms as well with this same theming. The commons area and integrating the lockers within those study spaces. You can see the classrooms on the left-hand side, and then we've got the exam level up on that top floor. In addition to the classrooms, we've also got the cafe, and we saw this because it sits in between the levels, and like a Victorian house, it's a sort of an add-on, seen as kind of somewhere in between, like a conservatory is added onto a Victorian building.
And it also opens out into that agora, so it's sort of directly off that open space.
Yeah, so it's obviously functions as the canteen, but also as teaching spaces. There's enough room for a class to gather in a corner in this kind of tan nook, but also has the canteen kitchen, but also for kind of breakfast, talks, presentations. It has multi-modes.
We assume that this will, the canteen cafeteria will appear on TripAdvisor very soon as one of the great cafes of Bayside.